My name is Sabah Al-Rayes. I'm an engineer and architect with minor in architecture. I've written a book about the history of architecture in Kuwait because I felt a need for the subject when I started researching. I couldn't find any books related to that. There are a lot of books, just photos and recent photos, and that's it. But nothing about the history of architecture. And so I thought, rather than blaming others not to write, I might myself, one of the pioneers, might as well document at least my own experience. I've graduated in 1965 and lived the development and the activities that were during Sheikh Abdullah Salim era. So I documented part of my own experience working as an engineer in the Ministry of Public Works, and established my own firm, Pan Arab Consulting Engineers, in 1968, and participated in building more than 1,000 major projects. And that put a touch in architecture in Kuwait. So that's a short.
Okay, perfect. Okay, and the next question I have here, you might have touched on it a little bit, but I was going to ask, what first inspired you to document the history of architecture in Kuwait?
Well, when I started really looking for references, books, I only found two books by Sabah George Shibir, who is he has a great touch in Kuwait architecture. And he wrote a book about the development of the Arab cities, but that had only maybe less than 10% of it about Kuwait. Then he wrote another book which was mainly dedicated to Kuwait, Kuwait architecture, and because he held the post of senior architect in the municipality of Kuwait in the early 60s, and then he moved to the planning board and wrote his book, which is a very, very valuable book. I'm lucky because I studied two subjects. I started with architecture and then shifted to civil engineering. I got my degree in civil engineering, but minor in architecture. So I have academically both architecture and engineering. And this helped me a lot managing my architectural firm, because you have to deal with architects, you have to deal with engineers, surveyors, quantity surveyors, electrical engineers, mechanical engineers, and you have to, if you have both experience or degrees, then that makes it much easier to work with others, because you understand their mentality too. It's very difficult to deal with architects because normally architects are artists, and they disregard the deadlines, they disregard the cost. If a client comes and says, "Oh, I have 1 million KD, I want you to build me this," you cannot tell him, no, increase it to 5 million. I only have 1 million. But architects tend to disregard this. Most architects, of course. Well, as I said, I've done more than 1,000, so it's very difficult to choose. But one that really stands is the Arab Organization building. It's a nice, beautiful building, very well thought of, and of course, it's thanks to Abdul Latif Al-Hamid, who at the time was the owner and representative who did most of the work, you could say. But it's a beautiful building, and I'm proud that I'm really participated in designing and executing it. Well, I first of all encourage the people in my generation to write their own experience, because really our history lacks books about architecture. And look, in 1920, the third wall protecting Kuwait was built. Unfortunately, none of the historians that wrote about that era hardly mentioned anything about the third wall, even though it was one of the biggest architecture feat at the time. It's a huge, taking in consideration at the time you didn't have bulldozers, you didn't have cranes, you didn't have, everything is manual, and building such a huge big project in less than 3 months, that was a great accomplishment. Yet none of historians wrote about it more than few lines. And so I encourage my colleagues to write about their own experience. And fortunately, I succeeded in convincing at least one Badr al-Ajan to write about his experience in construction in the oil sector, which is completely different than architecture, but at least his experience working with the oil sector is a great accomplishment.
Yes, for sure. And then what about?
Well, the younger generation, I encourage them to document, and without documentation, you don't have any subjects. And in order for you to write, you have to read. For me to write this book, I had to probably read more than 600, 700 books. And that increased, of course, my vision about things that I didn't know. I mean, even though I am from the so-called old generation, yet without reading, you can't reach anywhere. And ask questions. The answers lead you to the key for knowledge.
Yeah.
Well, I'm really surprised. Number one, pleasantly surprised, and I really, this is a beautiful feeling to see that young generation are interested in the history of architecture. Okay, and people always criticize, but we have to judge things, at the time that decision was taken, and what kind of information were underhand so you cannot blame something, and you don't know really the circumstances under which that decision was taken. So no, I'm very, very pleased that I see young people interested in my book. It's very, very satisfying.